Hey everyone, Nizori here, and today we're going to go over the brand new co-op survival action RPG, Enshrouded, that just launched today onto Steam. I had some time to play with it over the weekend, and now that it's launched, I'm going to go ahead and give you an in-depth look at some of the mechanics and some of the gameplay of this title. I was able to play, I probably clocked in somewhere between 8 and 10 hours this weekend. I have a pretty good idea on a lot of the general base mechanics of the game. I am excited to get through it. I want to say that my time with it, I had a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a great game to run through, especially with a couple friends. We might try and do some sort of hardcore run, but in this video, we're going to go over all little bits and pieces. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. So the TLDR of this game is Valheim meets Breath of the Wild. Essentially Valheim for its survival mechanics, resting, food progression, all that sort of stuff, building as well. And then Breath of the Wild for the movement, the combat, the exploration. It feels very Breath of the Wild. There's a lot of fast travel involved. So those two games, I would say, are the closest to that you could put to Enshrouded. Now, the premise of the game is that you are awoken into a world that was destroyed by the Shroud. The Shroud is a mechanic that's going to persist throughout your gameplay. Basically, in a lot of the areas of the game, there's going to be this mystical shroud that kills you, essentially. So when you step in it, if you're able to handle the level of the shroud, it'll give you a timer, 5 minutes, or that's the base number. It'll be altered by potions or gear or upgrades later on, but essentially, you can't stay in the shroud any longer than that. You have to either find something inside to refresh your timer, or you have to step out of it and regenerate your shroud timer. This is going to be something that's probably going to be very persistent throughout the game as you explore the world. It's a pretty interesting mechanic. I like it. It does prevent you from progressing further in the game, as you do need higher level of shroud protection to enter the higher level shrouds. So you're not going to be able to explore ahead in the world. It is going to be a very linear path from start to finish due to this mechanic. I want to say overall, I do like the mechanic. It's very mysterious. It looks great. The atmosphere is fantastic. I'm unsure if I like the very linear track that it's going to put you on. I do really appreciate games like Valheim that let you just explore everywhere, and you know, you're discouraged from exploring ahead because it's just so difficult. But I don't know if I hate this either. We're gonna have to do a full playthrough to really determine whether I like it or not. But that's pretty much the premise of the game. So now, taking a look at the combat, I want to say that the combat is most similar to Breath of the Wild's combat. It features a tab targeting system in which you're locked onto the opponent. You can do dodge rolls, you can block. The abilities and ranged spells are auto-targeted. You can manually aim them, but when you are targeted on an opponent, you do not have to manually aim. When you hit the skill, it will automatically fire at the opponent. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I would say I really don't prefer it in a combat system for a PC game. That's just my personal preference. I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy it. It's just not a preference of mine. But assuming that the game gets harder later on, I wouldn't mind it at all. At the moment, in the early hours of the game, it hasn't really jumped out to me as a complicated system to work with, and I typically prefer more of a challenge, but this is just my own opinion regarding the combat system. Now, aside from how you target and how you shoot, the game does feature a wide range of weapons. There are, from what I saw, swords and different various melee weapons like clubs, each of them featuring different damage types. You also have ranged weapons like bows and whatnot. The enemies have had crossbows. I have not found a crossbow yet, but I'm assuming they are in there somewhere. There are staffs and wands. Wands are short range. They don't feature any sort of variety in what you do with them. They're not like spell casting. They just fire a little ranged projectile at the enemy. And then staves have spell charges with various different things like ice bolts or healing spells, and you'll need to either find those or craft them later on. Now, aside from the variety of weapons that you can use, there is also a class skill tree in which you put skill points into, pushing you towards a different class. There are 12 different classes to choose from. It seems that 4 of them are more range survival based. There's 4 that are more wizard or magic based. And then there are 4 that are more fighter based, with warriors, barbarians, tanks. Now, it's very interesting that there are tank and healer classes on these trees. It's not usual to see kind of a class-based system in a survival game. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out as we progress through the game. It looks like it's highly encouraging group play since there are support roles thrown into here. So really interested to see how this plays out over the course of the game. but really cool to see. I feel like it's going to be really refreshing to actually have a full-blown class system in a survival game like this. And the last thing that I want to talk about is the quests and progression. So if you're unfamiliar with a game like Enshrouded, or what I would call a linear progression survival game, essentially the loop is explore, get stronger, beat some sort of challenge, and then repeat that cycle. The game does seem to do a pretty good job at that. There are NPCs that you collect that will, well, I say collect, but you bring them back to your base and summon them there, and they help progress your tech tree. You craft various different types of armor and weapons. You go out, you explore, you fight a boss, and then you rinse and repeat. So I want to say the progression does feel like it's pretty satisfying. I will say that I'm not a huge fan of the exploration in the game. The exploration in the game is very similar to Breath of the Wild, where you unlock some sort of waypoint or some sort of point of interest, and it gives you a fast travel point to that location. And there is a lot of fast travel available. I don't really love that. I'm not a huge fan of fast travel in most games. It does make the world feel very small and gives Enshrouded a more arcadey type of feel. I will say that I really enjoyed playing it so far, and I'm looking forward to giving it a full playthrough, but there are bits and pieces about this that I will say probably will make Enshrouded not my absolute favorite survival RPG of all time, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm going to reserve judgment. If I were to give my final thoughts on the game, I think it's going to be a pretty good success. I think it'll be reviewed well. I think people are going to enjoy it. I think it'll be a good staple in the survival genre. And I've said this, I think 5 times, but I am excited to play it all the way through. So that'll probably wrap it up for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your opinions on the game. If you guys are loving it, if you don't like different pieces of it, if you agree with any of my points or disagree, honestly, I'd love to hear it. But guys, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you around.